Hello.
Да, Филипп, привет.
Так.
Здравствуйте.
О, всем привет-привет.
Доброе утро.
Доброе утро.
Да,
Hi, everyone.
так. Ой, как приятно видеть знакомых людей.
Это ты
Да.
про меня?
Слушай, да, ну я про тебя, но есть здесь люди, которых я вижу сильно реже, чем тебя. Вот. И это прям приятно. Слушай, наверное, думаю, что? Мы подождем еще минутки 4?
На
Как?
4 минутки подождем, и потом мы можем начинать.
Да, давайте. Ага. Я начну, наверное. Ой.
Можно пока поговорить о погоде.
Как тут, я говорил, да, с Ольгой буквально там 5 минут, 10 минут назад, точнее, не говорил, так переписывался. А тут как-то ставят музыку, я знаю. И недавно я был на одном мероприятии, где вообще играл диджей. Знаете, вот когда люди собираются еще, там играл диджей. Мне кажется, это довольно прикольно.
Какую музыку ты бы поставил бы для нашей встречи?
О, это очень сложный вопрос, потому что я слушаю абсолютно разную музыку. Просто, ну вот абсолютно разную музыку. Для нашей встречи я бы поставил что-нибудь бодренькое. Ну, потому что у меня лично утро. У Филиппа тоже.
Ну, у нас есть часть ребят, которые в московском часовом поясе.
Ну да.
У них уже вечер, у них
Ну и
уже...
тем более
Да,
им тоже.
доброе утро всем.
Да,
Или
Филипп,
вечер.
им тоже нужно что-то бодренькое. Им тем более нужно что-то бодренькое, потому что у нас утро. Я уверен, Филипп уже был на workout.
Да,
Я
вот
знаю.
сегодня chest day. Я уже покушал breakfast.
Да, он точно уже был в зале. Окей. А, не, ну вот приходит народ, да, приходят люди. Классно. Сергей, привет. Олег, ты куда-то едешь?
Да, привет, Никита, привет.
Да, привет, Сереж. Олег, куда ты едешь? А, тебя не слышно.
Да, я в дороге, недалеко, тут километров 120. Вот.
120, понятно, недалеко. Это по американским или канадским меркам недалеко.
Ну да, поэтому говорю, как бы по месту. Практически по месту.
Окей, классно. Ну, ты в Канаде?
Да.
Окей. Олег, очень интересный мой друг. Я его всегда, у меня с Олегом всегда одно слово ассоциируется. Тяжеловес. Такое. Но это я больше про бизнес, про банковскую сферу, про что-то такое, да. Так. Ну что, минутка и начнем тогда.
Да, еще
Да, мы
минут...
тоже можем начать.
Можно начинать. Ну, да, давайте я все-таки представлюсь сам в 2 словах и передам слово Филиппу, потому что Филипп изюминка встречи, я бы сказал. То есть я бы хотел познакомить с Филиппом, познакомить с тем, чем мы занимаемся, с текущим проектом. И, в общем, больше всего будет говорить Филипп. А по поводу меня, ну, тут практически большинство меня знает из тех, кто присоединился, но я в 2 словах скажу. Я живу в Лос-Анджелесе. В 2 словах, у меня там, я женат, 3 детей, я математик по первому образованию. Originally я из Санкт-Петербурга. С 21 до 34 лет я очень сильно занимался бизнесом. А вот в 28 лет начал сперва инвестировать в венчур, то есть в стартапы, в компании на ранних стадиях. А последние 8 лет я инвестирую только в США и вот в коммерческую недвижимость, в проекты value-add и в private equity. Я являюсь сооснователем и управляющим партнером Volchi Capital Partners, и мы вот вместе с Cambridge SPG, с Филиппом инвестируем в направление Organic Food в компании на поздних стадиях и помогаем это делать людям со всего мира. И вот тут я, в общем, уже передаю слово Филиппу. Он расскажет про себя, он расскажет более подробно про то, что мы делаем, и про конкретный проект, которым мы сейчас занимаемся. Единственное, я скажу, что Филипп, он приехал в США, когда ему было 8 лет, и ему сильно проще говорить по-английски, но при этом он любезно согласился рассказать нам все на русском. Поэтому давайте не судить строго и поддержим его как-то в этом.
Ну, спасибо, Никита. Да, я приехал из Москвы, когда мне было 8 лет, и теперь я живу в Южной Калифорнии. Здравствуйте. Я включил свою камеру познакомиться, но я ее сейчас выключу, чтобы вы меня все слышали получше. И мы в любой момент можем переключиться на английский. Это будет много раз легче для меня. Но я начну, и Никита будет мне помогать, если надо. Так что мы сюда с семьей приехали 32 года назад. Но я начал свой профессиональный опыт работать на большой компании, которая называется DaVita Dialysis. И там я делал mergers and acquisitions. И я, и моя команда 50 людей, мы выросли эту компанию от 6,5 биллиона продажи в год на 12,5 биллиона продажи в год в 3 года. И мы это сделали, мы покупали dialysis клиники. Мы купили больше 1000 их и сделали integration. Мы купили компанию, которая называется Healthcare Partners за 4.3 billion. Потом мы купили insurance компанию, которая называется Scan. И в эти 3 года DaVita стала самая большая healthcare компания в мире. Но потом в 2011 году я ушел из этой компании. И моя сестра Полина ушла из компании, где она работала, называлась Capital Records. И мы начали Cambridge SPG. И в то время мы начали Cambridge SPG, чтобы покупать distressed real estate. Потому что в то время, наверное, все мы помним, было очень много distressed real estate. И никто не покупал, потому что все думали, что низ придет в 2012, 2013 или даже 2014 году. Так что мы покупали этот distressed real estate на 10-15 центов на доллар. И мы начали, очень мелко, просто использовали свои деньги и покупали несколько проектов. Потом мы начали собирать деньги. И в 5 лет мы собрали больше, чем 350 миллионов equity. Мы купили 44 разных зданий здесь, в Калифорнии и в штате Невада. Мы продали уже 43 из этих 44. И мы achieved 148% non-leveraged project level IRR. И потом, в 2017 году, мы сделали наш первый private equity investment в маленькую компанию, которая называется Once Upon a Farm. И почему мы начали инвестировать в organic food and beverage компании? Потому что как мы заработали деньги в real estate, это тот же самый способ, как мы зарабатываем деньги сейчас, мы берем 20% carried interest, 20% profit, который мы achieve для наших investors. И так что, когда в 2016 году мы начали продавать real estate, мы заработали деньги в первый раз и хотели инвестировать. Но в 2016 году не было distressed real estate, так что мы начали искать другие проекты, где мы могли, как мы говорим, achieve higher upside potential. И в 2017 в январе 2017 году наша группа купила 19% этой маленькой компании, которая называется Once Upon a Farm. И в то время Once Upon a Farm имела только 400 тысяч в год продажи. Потом мы привлекли Jennifer Garner стать major investor и co-founder. И после этого человек, которого зовут Джон Форкер, стал наш CEO. И Джон Форкер построил компанию, которая называется Annie's Organics. От 0 до 200 миллионов в год продажи. Он продал Annie's General Mills за 860 миллионов. И потом стал наш CEO в Once Upon a Farm. И вместе мы построили Once Upon a Farm от 400 тысяч в год продажи. В этот год мы окончим больше, чем 175 миллионов. И наш projection на 2025 больше, чем 300 миллионов в год продажи. И наша группа up 20x на этом первом investment. Потом в январе 2018 году мы инвестировали в маленькую компанию, которая называется Vive Organic. И они делают такие полезные напитки. У них было только 70 тысяч в месяц продажи. И в октябре 2022 года мы продали Vive Organics Suja Juice за 152 миллиона. И это был 12.8x return на первый investment, seed round, 8.5x на Series A и 3x на Series B. Наша группа была первый инвестор в компании, которая только была началась 6 месяцев назад, которая называется Pravey Ravo Eyewear. И там наш партнер был Джейми Фокс, Эшли Бенсон, Хейли Стайнфелд и Джереми Пивен. И в этой компании мы продавали luxury designer sunglasses за $29.95. И наш второй год продажи был 2019 год. Мы окончили этот год с 21 миллиона продажи. И потом в феврале 2020 года мы продали Pravey Ravo за 110 миллионов компании, которая называется Safilo. Так что мы много deals делали, но как summary, наша группа от января 2017 года до сейчас инвестировали больше, чем 250 миллионов в примерно 20 компаний. Наша группа инвестирует от 10 до 30 миллионов в компании, которые от 20 до 100 миллионов в продаже в год и не теряют деньги. И иногда мы инвестируем в компании, которые меньше, если у нас есть повод инвестировать. И вот почему наша группа сейчас инвестирует 15 миллионов в компании, которая называется Tosi. И, Никита, все люди, которые на этом звонке получили информацию про нас, про Tosi. Я, конечно, записал все по-английски, presentation про Tosi, и CEO этой компании записал презентацию, или мне попробовать по-русски сделать презентацию про Tosi?
Я тебе предлагаю вот как сделать. Я знаю одного человека, который точно не говорит по-русски, но он точно знает про Tosi.
Не говорит по-русски или не говорит
Не говорит
по-английски?
по-английски, да. Но я просто вижу, я просто никогда не слышал тебя так долго по-русски. И я просто вижу, что ты
Я тоже.
тоже
Очень
себя не
давно.
слышал так долго
Да,
по-русски, да?
да,
Окей.
да.
Давай попробуем сделать таким образом. Я знаю, что 90% ребят говорит по-английски. Я вижу, что тебе намного будет проще сказать это по-английски. Давай сделаем таким образом. А вот именно сделай Tosi по-английски, а мы потом перейдем в режим некого диалога. Да, ребята что-то будут спрашивать, что-то мы будем отвечать, и это всегда можно будет сделать проще по-русски. Короче, скажи
That
про
sounds like
Tosi
a
на английском.
wonderful plan.
Окей, скажи про Tosi на английском.
Филипп,
Я надеюсь, ребята поймут.
у нас сейчас еще в ожидании несколько человек висят на эту встречу. Подтверди их, пожалуйста, Филипп.
У меня только показывается, что Сергей joining.
Да, подтверди, пожалуйста, Сергея.
Я подтвердил?
Ага, все, хорошо, спасибо.
Окей, переключаемся на английский. Спасибо, Никита. So, as most of you may have already read, Tosi has impressively grown from 2.2 million in 2022 to 6.2 million in 2023. They're on track to do over 9 million this year. But if Tosi had the capital to finance all of the purchase orders that they received this year, revenue would have been north of 14 million. Tosi has attracted a CEO who has accomplished what less than 0.1% of any CEO in this entire industry will ever accomplish, which is to build a business to over a $100 million revenue run rate, sell it to Nestle, and achieve a 30x for his investors. Tosi's gotten placement into some of the country's most difficult to get into retailers, and meanwhile, they've sold over 25 million super bites since they launched. Tosi now plans to roughly 10x their revenue to 100 million by 2028, 2029, and I will explain why their plan is actually very conservative here shortly. But the story of Tosi starts in 2012 when Stephanie Holtz, who is a mother of three who lost everything during the 2008-9 recession, even the family home, found herself having to go back to work in her early 50s to support the family. And she was working for Dr. Bahar, an internist here in Southern California. And an internist is a doctor who specializes in internal organs and the treatment of internal diseases. And after several years of working with Dr. Bahar, Stephanie noticed that the majority of the patients coming in were suffering from ailments related to poor nutrition and a highly processed diet, and that a treatment protocol almost always included a meal plan. And so after several years, Stephanie had an idea to start a supplement company, which would then sell beneficial products to these patients to help them on their wellness and recovery journey. Things like enzymes to help with digestion, organic green superfood powders to supplement vitamins and minerals, plant-based protein powders. Well, after several years of selling supplements, Stephanie noticed that they were very successful in helping patients clean up their breakfast, their lunch, and their dinner, but they consistently made poor snacking choices. So Stephanie developed the Tosi Super Bites. And in their first year, they were 98% of sales. People absolutely loved them. So they got rid of the supplements. Dr. Bahar was the first investor with 75,000, and Tosi Snacks was born. Then, with no business experience or relationships, simply by word of mouth and the quality of the product, Stephanie was able to grow Tosi to $2.2 million of annual revenue. And that's because Stephanie was not alone in her observations while working for Dr. Bahar. According to the CDC, unhealthy diet contributes to approximately 678,000 deaths each year in the US due to nutrition and obesity-related diseases, such as heart disease, cancer, and type 2 diabetes. And in the last 30 years, obesity rates have doubled in adults, tripled in children, and quadrupled in adolescents. And today, 70% of Americans are overweight, and $173 billion is spent annually on healthcare related to obesity. In fact, the World Health Organization estimates that 80% of premature heart disease cases, strokes, and instances of type 2 diabetes, as well as 40% of cancers, could be avoided if unhealthy diets were eliminated. So it's a very big deal, and we are all starting to notice. In fact, in the last 10 years, the top 25 largest CPG conglomerates have lost over $30 billion of market share to better for you products. And the sales of organic products are up over 300% within that time frame. The snacking category is the largest food sector category with a $170 billion total addressable market. And Tosi is competing in the $16.2 billion subsegment, which includes bars, nuts, seeds, and trail mixes, which are rising in popularity because they're easy to consume, they're not processed, and are high in protein. Tosi delivers products that are organic, low in sugar, contain no artificial sweeteners, are not processed, and high in plant-based protein. And so while Stephanie was working for Dr. Bahar in 2014 in Seattle, Washington, a company called Noon Hydration was going through a very challenging time. Noon was at $8 million of annual revenue while losing $4 million per year for the second year in a row. The founder, who was also the CEO, was abusing the employees. And the investors of Noon were staring down the barrel of a 100% loss on their investment. So they started looking for a new CEO. But after conducting an extensive year-long nationwide search for a CEO, they discovered that nobody wanted to work at such a toxic and dire company. In fact, the feedback from the marketplace was, shut this company down. It is not recoverable. But then they got lucky, and they were able to recruit Kevin Rutherford to become the CEO. And Kevin has an extremely long and impressive background in turning around brands. Large brands like MGD, Miller Genuine Draft, which was in a 15-year decline until Kevin took it over and made it the hottest beer brand in the country. Or smaller brands like Miss Meyer's Clean Day, which was acquired by SC Johnson. So Kevin comes in as CEO of Noon, and the first thing that Kevin had to do was fire the former CEO and about half of the employees. And then Kevin came to the investors and board members of Noon and said that if they're even going to have a shot at being successful, they needed to reformulate the product. Because Kevin, who's an endurance athlete, was attracted to Noon because the science behind Noon's hydration formula was very strong. But Kevin also understood that athletes are hyper aware of what they're putting in their bodies. And back then, Noon was not a clean product. It contained artificial dyes and artificial sweeteners. And so half of the investors supported Kevin, while the other half, especially the earlier investors, were frustrated because they didn't want to take a detour to reformulate. They just wanted growth, but ultimately Kevin was able to win their support. This process of cleaning up the team and the product took 2 years. Then, over the next 5 years, Kevin grew Noon from 8 million of annual revenue to 85 million trailing 12-month revenue, over $100 million revenue run rate, all with just $11 million raised. He then sold Noon to Nestle for over 265 million and achieved a 30x for his first Noon investors and a 10x for his last round investors. Kevin is one of the best CEOs in this entire industry. Well, one of those investors that achieved a 30x on Noon is one of our investors at Cambridge SPG, Dan Nordstrom, the retired CEO of Nordstrom and part of the Nordstrom family. And while catching up with Dan, Dan mentioned this very successful outcome he achieved on Noon and spoke very highly of Kevin, and that is how we met Kevin. Well, one of the first things that Kevin said to us when we met is that he loves Tosi and that he eats one every single morning with his coffee because he knew that our group were early stage investors in Tosi. And back then, Tosi was going through their own challenges. Tosi's revenue was flat at 2.2 million for 2 years in a row. And the reason that Tosi's revenue was flat is because prior to COVID, 60% of Tosi's revenue came from coffee shops, gyms, hotels, airports, airplanes, all of the places that COVID closed. So they were looking for a new direction for growth and needed some help. And so 2 years ago, Kevin became chairman of the board at Tosi. And it was back then that our group wanted to invest, and Kevin's Noon investors wanted to invest, and Kevin said no. Kevin said that he was not going to take in any capital until he can figure out and prove that he can grow this business efficiently and profitably. And we looked at Kevin and said, well, Kevin, this business has been flat for 2 years. Tosi had less than $50,000 in their bank account. Exactly how are you going to grow this business and profitably? Well, Kevin laid out his strategy, and I'll explain what Kevin did and what Kevin plans to do next here shortly. But first, very quickly, Tosi manufactures and sells Super Bites, which come in a 2.4 ounce format, which is the breakfast and in-between meal bar, and the 1 ounce format, which is focused on the club, coffee shop, gym, hotels, airports, and other convenience and lifestyle channels. Tosi also sells the Super Bites in snack bags, which make it a convenient lunchbox or hike pack stuffer. Tosi has a nut-free line called the Super Puffs, which are made from nutrient-dense ancient grains, such as organic quinoa and amaranth. Every Tosi product contains a highly efficacious dose of functional ingredients, such as organic nuts, chia seeds, flax seeds, sesame seeds, and very small amounts of organic cane and cassava syrup. the formulation is focused on satiety and nutrient density to nourish the human body. And unlike most bars on the market, which melt inside the wrapper the moment you take them outside on a hot day, Tosi doesn't melt or flatten in any environment. Tosi has obtained very difficult to get certifications, such as USDA Organic, Non-GMO Project Verified, Kosher certification. But even more importantly, the Women's Business Enterprise National Council certification, which has enabled Tosi to grow efficiently and rapidly, because most national retailers in the US, like Costco, Target, Walmart, Whole Foods, Sprouts, and others, oftentimes waive expensive slotting fees for businesses that have this certification, because unfortunately, there's just not too many of them. Tosi has developed a proprietary and difficult to replicate manufacturing process, which enables Tosi to achieve their signature level crunch. Tosi roasts and heats the seeds and nuts, and heats the small amounts of organic cane and cassava syrup, and combines all ingredients warm inside a tumbler, which evenly coats the ingredients. That is then put out onto a conveyor where it is stamped, perforated, and then rapidly cooled. And this process enables Tosi to achieve a 94 brick level crunch, which is the same level of crunch as a toffee, which is almost 100% sugar. This crunch level is very easy to achieve with a lot of sugar, but very difficult to achieve with small amounts of sugar. And all of Tosi's products contain under 6 grams of sugar. And so Kevin started his growth plan with Costco. And the reason that Kevin started with Costco is because Costco pays in 15 to 21 days. So their working capital requirement isn't long. He was then able to negotiate favorable payment terms with their manufacturers and suppliers to match those of Costco and utilize PO financing when needed, which was easy to obtain due to Costco's strong creditworthiness. Tosi is achieving over 45% margin on their Costco business, and Costco enabled economies of scale across ingredients, packaging, and manufacturing costs, which then further helped improve the profitability of Tosi's other channels, their natural and conventional grocery stores, coffee shops, gyms, Tosi.com, Amazon. But Costco did something else for Tosi. It became a place of discovery, because every time that Tosi would launch a new city or geography with Costco, they would then start seeing a massive influx of new customer orders on Tosi.com and Amazon from those regions. Currently, Tosi is for sale in 120 Costco clubs on a 6-week rotation basis, meaning it's only sold there 6 weeks out of the year, not all 52. But Costco wants to expand Tosi into all 600 clubs and make it a permanent item, meaning it'll be sold all 52 weeks per year. And the reason that Costco wants to expand Tosi is because Tosi's performance at Costco is over 57% higher than Costco's benchmark for this category, and because Tosi has the women-owned business certification. And Costco wants to support businesses that are both performing well and have this certification. And if we look at Tosi's current performance at Costco, and Tosi sells $1,557 per SKU, per club, per week, and $607 of that is gross profit. And if we assume that this performance doesn't change, even though our experience from other brands tells us it'll probably double over the next 2 to 3 years. But if it doesn't, if it just stays where it is today, then in all 600 clubs as a permanent item selling 52 weeks per year, each SKU would produce over 49 million of annual revenue and almost 19 million of gross profit. Tosi is working on getting 2 SKUs in as permanent items into Costco while developing a kids line, which could be the third. But Tosi's model takes a very conservative approach because the model assumes that by 2030, Tosi will only have 1 SKU in just 300 Costco clubs, so half the chain, and that 1 SKU is only sold 40 weeks out of the year, not all 52. In fact, there's general conservatism all throughout the model because the model assumes that Tosi will grow from their current distribution of about 2,000 stores to just 13,300 stores by 2030. But we see that growth happening as early as 2026, 2027, especially with the list of retailers that Kevin has already started bringing online, and I will get into that shortly. But even at 13,300 stores, which represents about $140 million of annual revenue, that represents less than 3% of the total stores that Tosi can be sold in the US, because Tosi can be sold in over 434,000 stores in the United States, and that excludes Canada. And that is one of the things we love most about Tosi, is we can sell it anywhere, in coffee shops, gyms, natural and conventional grocery stores, online retailers, hospitals, universities, airports, airplanes. Tosi can be shipped anywhere in the world without refrigeration because Tosi has a 1-year non-refrigerated shelf life. So going back to my first statement, where if Tosi had the capital to finance all of the purchase orders that they received this year, their revenue would have been north of 14 million. And that's because in the beginning of this year, Tosi is sold in about half of the Whole Foods stores in the country. Whole Foods has been wanting to add additional SKUs and expand nationwide. But prior to this financing, Tosi did not have the capital to build the inventory to support that expansion. So they had to say no. Now they're saying yes. Sprouts, which is a 400 store chain nationwide, has been wanting to bring in Tosi. Now Tosi's saying yes. Costco, which did just a 4-region or 120 club rotation in the beginning of the year, has been wanting that rotation to be a national rotation, meaning all 600 clubs. Tosi was not able to accommodate that much inventory, so they had to say no. Next year, they'll be able to say yes. About 1,000 high-end gyms are taking Tosi
Кажется, так удобно,
next
да,
year.
когда я смотрел на компьютере, да?
Lifetime Fitness,
Филипп,
LA Fitness. Yeah.
кто-то включил звук. Ну, может быть, и хорошо.
Okay,
Я
let's
бы-
get to the bottom, to the
Yeah.
returns, and we'll finish very quickly.
Да,
So,
потому что, я может скажу, потому что интереснее, не знаю, во всяком случае, людей, которых приглашены сюда, да, интересно, мы сейчас поговорим об этом, позадаем вопросы, да, поговорить еще больше о самом направлении. Не вот именно о ТОСе, а вот о самом направлении, о группе, да, о компетенции и так далее. Вот.
yeah, no, okay, давай закончим про Tosi и пойдем в другой direction.
Супер.
Okay, so our group is investing to support this growth. Our group is investing 15 million.
Кто говорит по-английски?
Тут,
15 million in this Series B preferred growth equity round, which is going to be the last round of financing for Tosi before their exit. The pre-money valuation that has been secured for our group is 20 million, which is extremely attractive because it's only 2.4 times 2024 expected revenue multiple or 1.3 times 2025 projected revenue multiple. And when we look at about 24 comps, which are provided in the materials, the average multiple paid and exit is 4.9 times revenue multiple. So we're getting a very good deal. Tosi's goal is to get to 100 million. And if we assume a 4 times revenue multiple at exit, which is almost an entire multiple below comps, then our group will achieve a 9.34x equity multiple on this deal. If Tosi stumbles and only achieves half of their plan and grows to just 50 million, our group would still achieve a 4.7x equity multiple on the deal. But what Kevin Rutherford and the Tosi team are striving for is to exceed $170 million of annual revenue, which would imply that our group could achieve as high as a 16.45x equity multiple on this deal. The downside protection of this round is also very thoughtful and strong because this Series B preferred round carries a 1x liquidation preference, which means that the only way that our group could lose money on this transaction is if Tosi sells for less than $15 million after investing $15 million for growth, a scenario which we believe is highly unlikely. For those who are in the US, this is very important. The Series B stock carries a Section 1202 designation, which means that this is qualified small business stock, QSBS, which means that it qualifies for a federal tax exemption up to a 10x in gain as long as the stock is held for a minimum of 5 years, which is why this is a 5-year deal. And most importantly, Tosi's vision is a lot more ambitious than what their model suggests because Kevin and the team are building Tosi to be a brand that consumers can trust. That if they buy a Tosi product, whether it's the Super Bites, the Pops, the future Tosi Kids line, or anything that says Tosi, they can be confident that this product is safe for them and for their family. And we believe that Tosi's experienced and passionate team has what it takes to make Tosi the next massive national success in the bar and snack category, not only in the US, but the world. Since signing the term sheet on September 3rd, our group has already committed over 15.2 million, and we see this round stretching to accommodate members of our group. And with that, I'll take a pause and hand it over обратно to Nikita.
Да, Филипп, спасибо большое. Давайте, на самом деле, как бы включим диалог, это мое предложение, да, и какая у меня задумка, да, это, дай-ка я видео включу, это вообще поговорить про направление, задать вопросы, почему organic food, все же вроде в технологии бегут, ну вот, и действительно статистика такова, что инвестиции в основном идут в технологию, а почему тут organic food и почему он так выбран, может быть, какие-то вопросы про группу, вот об этом поговорим. Ну, мы можем поговорить про Тоси, естественно, тоже, да, вот, хотя, мне кажется, после такого представления там мало должно было остаться вопросов, вот, ну, я тут и шучу, конечно, вот. Поэтому вот у меня задумка такая, И, в общем, не стесняйтесь, задавайте вопросы. Так. Все отходят от питча.
Да, Никита, у меня вопрос есть.
Да.
Филипп, спасибо большое за презентацию. It was nice to listen. It was impressive. Возвращаясь к вопросу Никиты, основной вопрос, да, интересно услышать про organic food как направление, как investment opportunity, что за этим стоит, какие есть возможности, какие есть риски. Про риски особо интересно узнать, потому что я знаю, что, например, тот же самый Tosi предлагает очень хорошую и высокую доходность, и какие риски вы видите как направление organic food, и так и в направлении Tosi, как собственно, в самом Tosi. То есть, хотелось бы больше про отрасль саму, да, что она из себя представляет, чем она интересна. Спасибо.
Ну, я могу ответить это по-английски.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, so the food and beverage sector in the US is a $2.4 trillion category. For obvious reasons, we're all eating and drinking all the time. As I mentioned in the Tosi presentation, the top 25 largest CPG conglomerates, and this is like General Mills, Unilever, Pepsi, Coke, Kraft, Nestle, they've been losing market share to better for you products. And the reason is because the food system in the United States is very broken, and it's leading to a lot of chronic disease because it's high in sugar, contains artificial ingredients, which then disrupt the endocrine system, hormones. So people are starting to notice this, and they're changing. And what's interesting is even though it's a $2.4 trillion category that's having a lot of shift in consumer preferences, only 3% of venture capital dollars are invested in the sector. The rest goes to tech, healthcare, life sciences, but M&A activity in CPG is double that of tech and double that of healthcare. It is the most active M&A environment or sector. And if you go into any grocery store in the United States, 90% of the products that are on the shelves have an M&A story, whether it's from 100 years ago or from last week. So these large conglomerates grow through acquisitions. And the reason that they grow through acquisitions is because they're not set up to start, incubate, test new things. They're sales and marketing organizations, distribution organizations. When they see something that's working, and that's usually 30 plus million of revenue and has strong velocity or rate of sale on shelf, they know that they can then take that and extrapolate it across all of the shelves that they sell their products on, right? Their distribution. And that's why CPG companies sell at a revenue multiple versus an EBITDA multiple. So an example of this, there's a company called Bai, B-A-I. It's a beverage. In my opinion, it's not a very good one, but they got to $250 million of revenue, and Dr. Pepper Snapple Group bought them for $1.7 billion. And the reason that they bought them for $1.7 billion on $250 million of revenue is because they knew that through their distribution, they can scale it very quickly to 400, 600, 800 million, and they did. Cliff Bar is another example. So one of our Tosi investors is Kevin Cleary, who was the CEO of Cliff Bar, and he grew Cliff Bar from 80 million of annual revenue to 1 billion of annual revenue. And then Cliff Bar was acquired by Mondelez for 2.9 billion on about 1 billion of sales. Kind Bar was acquired for 5 billion by Mars. One of our other investors in the deal is Bo Wrigley. Wrigley sold Wrigley to Mars for 28 billion in an all-cash deal in 2008. We have two people in the deal who have sold their companies to Nestle. Brian Sweetie, who sold Sweet Earth Foods to Nestle, and Ann Azer, who's the sister of the founder of Orgain, which they built and sold to Nestle. So there's abundant exit opportunities in CPG. There's several dozen large CPG conglomerates and about 2,000 private equity firms which acquire in the space. Now, getting to the risks, because I think that's very important. Less than 3% of any food or beverage startup will ever make it to 10 million of annual revenue. Less than 1% will ever make it to 20 million of annual revenue. And less than 0.5% will ever make it to 100 million. So as you can imagine, there's thousands of food and beverage startups every single year. And there's thousands that never make it every single year. Because even if the product is unique, novel, might be interesting, the brand might work, the barriers of entry into scaling in the US are very high. Because in order to get into a Whole Foods or a Sprouts or a Target or a Costco, one has to understand how these retailers operate, right? How they make money, how to present the brand, then get acceptance, then make sure that it's working on the shelf. Meanwhile, managing, right, working capital, inventory, manufacturing, supply chain, it is not easy. And so management is really the key. The reason that we were so successful at Once Upon a Farm, it's not because Jennifer Garner, it's not because it's fresh baby food, it's because John Foraker is our CEO. The reason we've been able to grow one of our other brands, the Coconut Colt, from a $2 million revenue business to a $25 million revenue business that has over $6 million of orders coming in every month is because our CEO there is RU+EN. He was one of the founders of Once Upon a Farm. And the reason we're so confident in Tosi is because our CEO, Kevin Rutherford, not only has been extremely successful in all of his other prior companies, and because he was so successful at Noon, but because he's been at Tosi for 2 years. And in that 2 years, without raising capital, he's been able to grow it from 2 million to almost 10 million, and it would have been more. So he's already proven that he can accomplish what he plans to accomplish at Tosi. Is that a helpful overview?
Yes, it is. Thanks.
Мгм. Так, кто-то еще, какие-то вопросы,
Да, у
диалог?
меня есть вопрос ко всем. Все ли хорошо понимают терминологию? И получается ли понимать информацию на английском именно в терминологии? Дайте, пожалуйста, какую-нибудь обратную связь, можно в чат просто в общий.
Well, and I guess I'll conclude perhaps my portion and explain kind of our structure.
Филипп,
Yes.
ну ты же передохнул с английским. А можешь переключиться на русский?
Да,
Ну,
окей.
Ира-
Я переключусь на русский.
Да, спасибо.
Окей.
Ира, что ты хочешь сказать?
Ну, я как бы не инициировала, но я хотела спросить вот что. Мы сегодня собрались, как я понимаю, больше именно про Тоси, так как это синдикат, предусмотрен в целевой проект, правильно или нет?
Да.
Правильно. Да?
Ну, смотрите, подождите. Тут есть, если от общего к частному идти, интересно рассказать про то, чем занимаемся. Интересно рассказать про само направление. Есть, да, есть, значит, конкретный проект Тоси.
Мгм.
И обычно людям, которые прямо интересуются конкретным проектом, мы делаем с ними отдельную встречу. Вот. И здесь это больше идея была ну, познакомиться.
Рассказать о направлении, да, поняла.
Познакомиться, да. Ну, и на примере Тоси.
Хорошо, но насколько я поняла на слух, больше как бы идет акцент на личность, с которой сотрудничает Филипп, да?
Имеется в виду проекты?
Проект тогда, кто ведет,
Ну,
курирует.
Ну, я объясню. Окей. Значит, та стадия, на которой мы инвестируем, это не стартап, это не венчур, это уже более поздние стадии, на которых менеджмент – это критически важная штука. То есть критически важный момент. То есть это критически важно. Да, продукт важен, да. Но менеджмент это потому, что мы уже там от выручки в 10, там 20 миллионов долларов должны добежать до выручки 100-150. И это не сделать на энергии фаундера, образно говоря. Это другая стадия.
Да, это понятно. И получается, за счет как бы за счет менеджмента, то, что он может вытащить все с конкурентами, как бы, ой, боже, слова подобрать, как бы риск конкуренции решается за счет высокого уровня менеджмента, да?
Нет, значит, это один из очень важнейших пунктов. Какой менеджмент, кто CEO. Но, например, мы не занимаемся компаниями, которые выпускают, ну, так называемые commodities. То есть, допустим, просто орехи или просто, не знаю, ореховое масло или что-то. Это всегда должны быть компании, у которых очень сильный продукт, и он имеет определенные барьеры для входа. У нас есть компании, у которых есть ноу-хау технологические. И там, не знаю, Salty, вот из последних компаний, Salty, Fourth and Heart, это компании, у которых есть технологические процессы, как сказать, сейчас я объясню.
Ну, можно сказать,
технологии.
proprietary, difficult to replicate, sometimes patented, sometimes trade secret, but not something that's easy for others to do at scale.
Мгм. Да, это обязательно.
Not commodity.
Да.
Окей.
А
То есть не
приоритет-
делается ставка только на CEO, конечно.
Мгм. Понятно.
Но CEO, то есть если нету CEO, который способен, он понимает, как довести компанию до 100, до 150, он способен это сделать, у него есть на это четкий план, то нас просто там нету. То есть это необходимое условие, но недостаточное.
Мгм. Ясно.
Да.
Поняла, хорошо, дальше.
Да, и Ирина Ефремова еще что-то хотела, она прям включалась, да, пару раз. Вот.
Две Ирины.
Всем привет, Филипп, Никита, ребята, всем привет.
Привет.
Филипп, я хотела, поблагодарить тебя, ты очень хорошо так на английском рассказал, очень чисто, очень понятно. Вот, приятная такая прям презентация. Я знаю продукт, кстати, Тоси давно, и я покупала его в Nectar Bar.
Да, мы продаем в Nectar, да.
Да, это очень классный продукт, я его даже знала раньше, чем мы познакомились с Никитой. Мне он очень нравится, я детям себе покупаю.
Да.
Вот. Хотела спросить, какие пороги входа в инвестирование в Тоси продукт, в органик, фуд, старт, какой?
Я не понял вас. You were breaking
Алло.
up a little bit.
Какой порог входа в наши проекты?
Какой порог входа, да.
Как minimum investment?
Да.
Ну, у нас как бы investments so far, они range от 100 тысяч до 3 миллиона, и все цифры как бы в середине. Но мы можем делать как бы exception. Мы все время пробуем иметь меньше, чем 40 investors в наших дел. Но потому что у нас было несколько очень больших investors в этот дел, мы как бы можем унизить минимум. И это хорошее место переключиться на что мы делаем и как мы делаем, чтобы все это было понятно, и почему мы делаем звонок с 19 людьми, чтобы это все make sense. Ну, так что, как бы, наша структура, мы делаем примерно 2, иногда 3 deals в год. Когда мы находим deals, и для нас это очень сложно найти хороший deal, потому что, то, что мы ищем, просто очень редкое. Но когда мы находим deal, мы, start LLC, и purpose этого LLC только инвестировать в эту компанию, в этот deal, в этот раунд. Потом мы вкладываем свои деньги в этот deal, все время от 10 до 35-40% каждого deal, depending на размер deal. Потом мы идем к нашей группе investors и собираем деньги. И мы это делаем, потому что мы зарабатываем 20% прибыли. Так что, example, если мы собираем 1 миллион, и это становится 2x, так что потом 2 миллиона, когда первый миллион идет обратно, и там миллион profit, мы бы в этом сценарии заработали 200 тысяч. Если мы соберем 10 миллионов, и это станет 20 миллионов, так что 10 миллионов profit, мы заработаем 2 миллиона. Если мы соберем 10 миллионов, и это станет 10x, будет 90 миллионов profit, мы заработаем 18 миллионов. Так что мы все время ищем the best deal, который может заработать the most amount of money, и собрать the most amount of money для этого deal. Если это как бы помогает всем понимать наш бизнес-модел.
Спасибо, понятно. А скажи, пожалуйста, инвесторы должны быть аккредитованные?
Да, они должны. Но я думаю, что потому что accredited investor definition hasn't been updated for so many years with inflation. I think everybody is an accredited investor at this point.
Да, и если мы говорим про инвесторов не резидентов США, то по большому счету это подписывается бумага о том, что они аккредитованные инвесторы, и они...
You self-certify that you're...
Да.
We don't check if, we don't look into your net worth or your bank accounts, or you just, using the subscription documents, by signing those, you're saying that you're accredited.
Поняла, спасибо.
Филипп, у меня есть вопрос короткий. Я по презентации пробежался. По поводу выхода, what's the game plan? То есть вы хотите продать крупной компании eventually или IPO, или какой все-таки...
Так что в этой компании мы не будем делать IPO. Так что в year 4 мы пойдем на рынок и попробуем продать компанию на year 5. Чтобы получить этот Section 1202 designation для favorable tax treatment. И how do we start the process? So we have the relationships with everybody, with Unilever, with Nestle, with Coke, with Pepsi, with Mars, but we don't go to those buyers ourselves. So we always hire an investment bank. It could be Piper Jaffray or Morgan Stanley. Jeffries has a good one in the sector. And then run a formal process, right, where they put together an exit package, very comprehensive exit package. They go to the entire market and get bids. And the reason that we do it this way is the same reason that you probably would never list your own house for sale and do your own open houses and showings, right? You would hire a real estate agent to do that because you just get a better outcome. right? Nobody wants to come in and have you tell them how you painted these walls 3 years ago and that it's still new, and right, they want the agent so they can feel free and comfortable and talk about options. So it's the same way when selling a company, except for instead of a real estate agent like you would use for a home, you use an M&A banker. Yeah, so no IPO. This will be a strategic sale.
Спасибо, понял.
И большинство компаний, которые находятся в портфеле, это M&A. Да? Ну, это strategic sale, наверное, все-таки, да, правильно сказать. То есть продажа.
Да, большинство, да. Редкие моменты есть, где IPO — это геймплан, но в Tosi это не геймплан.
Ну и компании, которые перечислял Филипп, да, они не растят компании, они их покупают. Ну вот на определенной стадии, я имею в виду. Потом они, конечно, их включают в свой портфель, но это компании, которые должны стоить уже хотя бы сотни миллионов долларов. Окей. Так, кто-то еще, как Ирина, хотела задать вопрос, но сомневалась. Давайте, может быть, задавайте, это будет здорово.
Hi, Philippe.
Hello.
For the great presentation. My name is Oksana, and I would like to ask you a question. So you mentioned about the organic market and why you're investing in it. Are there any other criteria of the market or the product that you haven't said before, but are still interesting for you? For example, do you consider natural products? And for example, are women-owned brands more interesting than anything else? Can you tell more about it?
Sure. So our criteria centers, so first around the actual financial parts of the business. So because less than 3% of businesses in the sector ever make it to 10 million of annual revenue, and less than 1% make it to 20 million of annual revenue, usually we invest in companies that are 20 or higher million of annual revenue.
Филиппа Волчика здесь, в России, в Питере. Это его брат, он живет в Америке.
Роман.
Да.
Выключите, пожалуйста, аудио. Спасибо.
So we usually invest in companies that are over 20 million of annual revenue. But in this case, and right, this was the same case of Once Upon a Farm and Vive and other companies that I talked about. In the case of Tosi, we're investing because Tosi is not yet at 20 million of revenue, but Tosi has more than 20 million of demand. And if they had the capital to actually finance and build the inventory for all of the orders that they're receiving, they would have been very close to 20 million. But the key here is the CEO, who has, right, not only built Noon Hydration to over 100 million revenue run rate, but really brought it back from, almost going bankrupt to this massive financial success. So when we put it all together, that's a very unique and very difficult to find situation where you have this almost small mom and pop size business, but with a product that has national appeal that's working extremely well in their limited, right, 2,000 stores, with management that could scale it to tens of thousands of stores. So it's just very difficult to find such a situation. So that's kind of the financial KPIs. As far as the product, so the product has to be organic. If it's not organic, well, it has to be organic, whether it's organic certified or sometimes it's organic, but it can't be USDA organic certified. But as long as it's still organic and we can verify that, that's interesting. Non-organic is very difficult for several reasons. So if the product is not organic, even if it's non-GMO, it's very likely that pesticides and herbicides are used on that produce or, right, whatever makes up that product. And then if, you know, we're investing our dollars behind products that are contaminated with pesticides, then we're literally investing in poisoning people. And that's not something that we want to do. If it has artificial dyes, if it has artificial sweeteners or any artificial ingredients, endocrine system disruptors, we cannot invest in that deal regardless of how good the deal may seem. Just that's a personal guardrail. And, you know, there's many ways to make money, right? You can make money in selling weapons and producing dirty energy and candy bars, but we'll leave that for someone else. That's just not what we want to do with our time or money. And then in the question of women-owned businesses or men-owned businesses, we don't have a particular, that's not a criteria of ours. We can invest in businesses that are run by men, by women. Most great businesses are run by both men and women together. In the case of Tosi, the fact that they have the women-owned business certification has also helped them tremendously, right? Because there's not a lot of businesses, as I mentioned, that have this certification. And because of that, most national retailers are very supportive, right? They take the meetings. They support the brands when they're on shelf. They give them more attention than, let's say, brands that are owned by large multinational corporations, right? So in this particular case, it's a value add for our group, if that's a helpful answer.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much.
Классно. Классно то, что есть вопросы, потому что они как бы, ну, глубже раскрывают тему, и это вообще такая главная задача этой встречи. Вот.
У меня есть вопрос, Никита. Во всех ли проектах предусмотрено как бы success fee? То есть при успехе.
Да, тут как раз говоря success fee, мы говорим об этом как о чем-то именно очень хорошем для инвестора. То есть мы подразумеваем, что нету никаких entrance fee, что часто бывает вот в такого рода инвестициях, и мы не берем это. И нету никаких management fee.
То есть у вас предусмотрено везде всегда только success fee.
Да. Да, это очень здорово, потому что мы как бы совсем сидим в одной лодке.
Хорошо, тогда такой вопрос. То есть я смотрю success fee 20%, а если получится так, что меньше будет, чем 10x, предусмотрен ли пересмотр комиссии или нет? Предусматривается или нет?
Ну, так что, ответ no. Так что, если $1 profit, мы получаем 20 центов profit. Как фи. Если 100 миллионов profit, мы получаем 20 миллионов фи. Нету никакой... И есть группы, которые делают всякие creative structures, как это 20%, если это 2x, если это больше, чем 3x, мы share 50-50, и миллион, это называется waterfall. Мы все время просто имели очень simple structure. Просто 20% of the profit.
Понятно.
Ну, я скажу так, что я сам же инвестирую в эти проекты, и когда я говорю с инвесторами, я считаю, что нужно... А вот, кстати, как Филипп, по-моему, вчера мы с тобой с кем-то общались, говорит, что вот если ты хочешь инвестировать, например, $1 миллион, то нужно инвестировать там, по 200 тысяч в 5 компаний, а не $1 миллион в одну. И в этом случае там, где-то это будет 15x, где-то это будет там 5x, пускай, да, но это выровняется в среднем.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we don't really, right, what's more important for us than raising money for any given deal is to build the relationships that then grow our group, that then enabled us to do larger deals and respond more quickly to exciting opportunities. So we always know, before we even start, we know we will raise the money because we have the network, we have the group. But by growing the group on every single deal, it has allowed us to grow. So, the first investment that we ever made in the space was a $1.5 million investment. And I'll tell you, it took us 5 months to raise this money. It was very difficult because we didn't have a track record. Our group was still small. Well, this year we invested 18 million in Fourth and Heart, 57 million in a biopolymer company called Tidal Vision. And now in 3 months, we're going to get close to 20 million on Tosi. And the reason we've been able to grow is because of building relationships with like-minded people, and of course, performing very well, which is the most important thing. So our goal is to build relationships, and we hope that you join us not just on Tosi, but we have the opportunity to show you more deals over the next 2, 3, 4 years. And if you like them, join us on those as we build the relationship and the portfolio together.
I have a quick question for Philip, if it's a good time.
Yeah.
Hi, Philip. My name is Arseny. Thanks a lot for this nice overview and an in-depth look at Tosi. My question is more about the investment group that you're running, CPG, Cambridge partner. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And particularly, I want to ask this question as sort of a window into investing into this sector. So I'm imagining that you already have several investments in that sector. Like you said, you generally invest 20, 30, 40% in each deal. So there's probably a few of these deals that have accumulated in your portfolio. Can you give us a sense of how these deals evolve? Maybe given a couple of examples of deals that are in your portfolio that look like they're gonna take off. Maybe some are not looking very good right now, going through some challenges. That'd be a good way to give us a sense of the risks. And maybe you could give us an example or two of deals that you looked at but decided they're not sort of meeting the bar for investing, sort of as a way to give an overview of that industry. Thanks.
Yeah, well, I'll start with the last question first. So I would say the majority of the deals that come across our desk just don't work, whether it's because they're too early or they don't meet, right? They're not unique enough. They're subject to private label competition, right? There's just, right? It has to be very special. Because we only do 2 to 3 deals per year, we're very thoughtful on what we spend our time on. So when we do decide to do a deal, I guess I'll just go through the entire portfolio, and it's on the Cambridge SPG website. So Once Upon a Farm, and some of this will be overlap from the beginning, but I'll go through. So Once Upon a Farm, we invested in January of 2017 when they were at 400,000 of annual revenue. We've since grown that business. This year we'll do over 175 million. We're projecting 300 million of revenue next year. We're up already 20x on that initial investment. That brand is planning to exit next year, sometime between Q2 and Q4. We think the valuation is going to be somewhere between 1.5 and 2 billion. So overall, I think that's going to be like a 40x on the first investment. And I will say, as big and as successful as Once Upon a Farm has been, Once Upon a Farm is fresh baby food. It'll always be sold in approximately 20,000 stores in the US that have refrigeration. Tosi, on the other hand, can be sold in all of those same stores, and 100,000 coffee shops that are in this country, 100,000 gyms, 250,000 convenience store, gas stations, C-stores, liquor stores, airports, airplanes, hospitals, universities. So we actually see Tosi as a much bigger opportunity. Then Fourth and Heart, which is the #1 ghee butter brand in the country. We first invested in Fourth and Heart when they were at 6 million of revenue. This year, they're on track to do almost 30 million, and they just launched a very innovative product. So ghee, which is a lactose-free butter, is a $60 billion global category, but all the ghee in the world is sold in jars. And the reason is because ghee can't hold a butter stick format. So Fourth and Heart developed a proprietary process which creates something called beta prime crystallization, which actually modifies the lipid molecules within the ghee butter to create the same structure as a butter stick. Then we have an investment in FitAid, which is the #1 natural sports recovery beverage in the country. They're planning to exit next year. It's about a $40 million revenue business. Ancient Nutrition, which is getting close to $500 million of annual revenue. It's the second largest nutrition supplement brand in the country. Snow Teeth Whitening, which is a $50 million revenue teeth whitening business based out of Arizona. They're in the market right now, looking to exit next year. Privé Revaux, which we invested when the company was only 6 months old. And then a year and a half later, we sold it for 110 million to Safilo. That was a quick 2x. Salty, we invested in Salty about a year and a half ago. They were a 19 million trailing 12-month revenue business that was not yet profitable. Now they're a $50 million revenue run rate business that's extremely profitable, doing $500,000 of net income per month. So very profitable and growing. Vibe Organic, which we were the first investors in, they were at 70,000 a month in sales. Then in October of 2022, we sold Vibe to Suja Juice for 152 million, achieved a 12.8x return on that seed round, an 8.5 on the Series A, and almost a 3x on the Series B. We're investors in a company called the Coconut Cult, which we invested about 2 years ago. Their revenue was 2.7 million trailing. Now their revenue run rate is over 25 million, but demand is over 72 million. So they're building manufacturing lines as quickly as possible to continue growing. Several others, but I'll tell you about some that haven't gone as planned. So we have an investment in a company called Owl's Brew, and it's an alcohol brand. And we invested in this company in 2017. Thankfully, it was a small investment for us, only 1 million. And this company has struggled to grow for many reasons, and that's why we don't invest in alcohol brands anymore. There's a 3-tier distribution system, so you have to go through 3 different levels of distributors to get to the store, and it's just a pain in the ass. So I don't think we're going to lose money on that deal, but we're not going to make any money on the deal. We investors in Cora, which is the #1 organic feminine care brand in the country. What else? TS the T is one that's kind of slow. So we invested in 2019. Their revenue was 7 million. This year, their revenue is 14 million. So very slow growth. We're probably going to just exit that position for a quick 2x. So the majority of our investments are doing extremely well. The ones that are kind of struggling or just not exciting, we've actually learned a lot from. And it has shaped our investment thesis and structure and, to hopefully make us better investors. But I would say, over the last 2 years, Like every deal has been strong. Like, you have like musicians that have like a one-hit wonder, right? They write one song, everybody knows that one song, but that's the only song that everybody knows. And then there's musicians that have like a greatest hits album, where there's like 8 songs on this greatest hits album, and you know every song, but then they have 100 other songs that you've never heard. And then there's the Beatles, where every single song is a hit. Like our goal is to be the Beatles, right? We're not investing, we're not allocating capital across dozens of transactions per year, hoping that one of them is going to be the next Google or Facebook or Tesla, and it's going to make up for the losses of everything else. That's not our structure, right? We're doing a very small volume of deals, and we prioritize quality versus quantity, if that's a helpful way to understand how we view our firm.
Oh, thank you. That's very helpful. Do you guys invest 100% of your time and energy pretty much into that industry, or you also look at other industries? Okay.
Yeah, no,
Thanks.
This is the only thing we do. Yep.
Cool. Окей. Так, кто-то еще, может быть, хочет задать какой-то вопрос?
Есть ли важна ли юрисдикция, с которой инвестируют, и каковы сроки по Тоси?
Well, okay, so I'll answer that question. So we can accommodate both domestic investors in the US. We can also accommodate foreign investors under a W-8 form. And, there's just certain limitations. Like, for example, right now, we can't accept a wire transfer from, let's say, Russia, right? But we do have Russian investors who have their money in Dubai or London. So I think, if the capital is coming from a country that's not like has unfriendly relations in the US, then it's possible.
Понятно, спасибо.
Да.
А по срокам?
Oh, yep. So in the case of Tosi, and right, every deal that we do has a different strategy, different timeline. In the case of Tosi, it's 5 years. It's not 3 years, it's not 4 years, it's not 6 years, it's 5 years. So in year 4, we'll go to market and try to sell as close to on the nose to year 5 as possible.
Now, as I understood, Irina asked about when the Tosi will close. I mean, when the closing date.
Yes.
Oh, the closing date. So as I mentioned, we're already oversubscribed. And our goal is to finish up kind of all conversations and do the final close before the end of the year. So we have, just a few more weeks here, the month of December, before Christmas and Hanukkah. We want to close everything before Hanukkah is the real answer.
It's the honest answer, yeah.
It's the honest answer.
Да, мы тоже Хануку празднуем, поэтому знаем.
Безрат Ашем. Отлично.
Окей. Так, ну окей. Кто-то, еще раз спрошу, все-таки, да, может быть, кто-то хочет что-то еще спросить. Ну, это вообще тогда прямо у нас сейчас 10:29. Это что-то такое тогда будет невероятное. Да, и очень-очень классное, что мы прямо закончим в 10:29, точнее в 10:30, потому что мы сейчас еще там скажем друг другу всем пока. Ну, да, пока. Ну что, мне кажется, это было здорово, потому что для меня лично было очень важно, чтобы ребята задавали вопросы. И мне, кстати, очень понравились вопросы. И они позволили копнуть поглубже, лучше узнать. Вот. Именно и про группу, я имею в виду, да, про направление. Вот. Поэтому очень здорово. Ну что, ребят, тогда я предлагаю на этом поставить троеточие. Да? И что? И побежать в жизнь?
Да, ну, большое спасибо всем. And we will talk soon.
Да, большое спасибо, ребят, что вы пришли. И, Филипп, тебе огромное спасибо за то, что поделился, и за то, что сделал это частично на русском. Ну, я еще раз повторюсь, я так долго не слышал, но, в общем, это было все понятно, и все было прекрасно. Ну, у тебя, ты знаешь, да, у тебя как английский, так и русский, они очень такие понятные и комфортные. Это тебе огромное спасибо тебе. И огромное тебе спасибо за твой английский, вот так я тебе даже скажу.
Ну, окей. Окей, ну, счастливо.
Спасибо всем.
Окей,
Всего
спасибо
доброго.
всем.
Спасибо. Пока.
Спасибо.
Пока.
Спасибо,
Давайте,
счастливо.
ребят. Пока.